You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest City of Fayetteville Ward meeting. Ward meetings are held at various times by City Council members to interact with and receive feedback from the residents of their ward.
Hi everybody.
Hello.
6 o'clock. We ready to get started?
Yes, ma'am.
So glad you're all here tonight. Thank you for coming. So this is the Ward 4 and Friends meeting. And I'm Rhonda Adams, Ward 4, Position 1.
Alan Long, Ward 4, Position 2. My first Ward 4 and Friends
First
meeting
meeting.
as City Council person.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. So we meet the last Monday night of every month at 6 o'clock. We go from 6 to 7 p.m. We don't meet in December. So this is the first meeting of the new year, and we'll have 10 more in the year 2013. A couple of years ago, Sarah Lewis and I came up with some rules of engagement that we've shared at the beginning of each meeting and have asked people to follow. All comments and questions should relate to the agenda. We're going to hold comments and questions until after presentation. We have 2 presenters tonight and they're both on schedule, so if you'll just hold your comments and questions, jot them down or remember them, and then after they're finished, ask questions at that time. And then raise your hand to comment, and Alan or I will acknowledge you and invite you to speak. And when you do that, we'd like for you to say your name and then address your comments to one of us rather than to each other. So, Alan, if it's okay with you, we usually start off going around introducing each other. You know who we are now. We have 2 speakers tonight. Let you 2 introduce each other. And then if we could just start going up and down the rows and introduce each other so we'll all know our names, and then we'll get right into the agenda, which Alan has written back here at 6:05. We're going to start with Peter, but let's introduce each other at this time.
My name is Peter Nierengarten. I work for the city. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about an update on the Weddington Corridor Plan and then a Safe Routes to Schools grant we're working on.
I'm Terry Gully. I'm the Transportation Services Director, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our 2013 and 2014 sidewalk plans.
Thank you.
I'm Chuck Atkins. I live at 3055 Quartz Drive over in Crystal Springs.
I'm Hayes Hudson. I live on Pyrite in Crystal Springs. I'm the HOA president for Crystal Springs.
I'm Charles Taunton. I also live on Pyrite in Crystal Springs.
I'm Archie Schaefer, and I live at 1404 West Cleveland.
Beverly Schaefer, 1404 West Cleveland also.
My name is Mark Osmond. I live on Foster Lane.
I'm Lynn Thomas. I live on Foster Lane.
Mary Harrington on Oak Haven.
Aubrey Shepard. I live at 1.
You're our and friends. Well, we're glad you're here.
Adam Motherwell, 683 Waterman.
Philip McKnight, 1969 Archer.
Good. For those of you who don't know, when the redistricting occurred, we lost some very faithful Ward 4 members, and they liked coming to our meeting. Aubrey was one of them, and there were several others. And so someone came up with a great idea that we would become Ward 4 and Friends and invite anyone from any ward. We are currently the only ward that has a regular monthly meeting, and there are people who like to come get caught up and visit in this setting. So everyone is welcome. If they're watching on TV, anyone's welcome to come to this meeting. It's a Ward 4 and Friends.
Yep.
All right. Ready for Peter?
All right.
Good deal.
So many of you may, if you were paying attention last fall, you may have heard our public outreach about our Weddington Corridor Plan. It was a neighborhood charrette, the 4th neighborhood charrette planning event that the city has done since 2004. We kicked off our open house and public input session on October 27th. It was a Saturday morning at the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club. And out of that planning event and all the community input we got was a master illustrative plan for a 25-year build-out along the Weddington Corridor, essentially from just east of Interstate 540 all along Weddington Drive to just a little bit past 51st Avenue. The plan is it's still in draft form. We haven't yet been adopted by City Council, but it is one vision for how this area could build out. Along with the plan were 4 guiding principles that we developed as a result of the public input we got, and they are redefining Weddington Drive as Weddington Parkway, and some of the things that went along with that were incorporating a boulevard cross-section, so a tree-lined street beautification, managing some of the speed, excessive speed issues that people felt were present on Weddington Drive, incorporating better pedestrian crossings and pedestrian access at a couple key locations, incorporating facilities for bicycles and alternative transportation. The second guiding principle we developed was envisioning a heart of the neighborhood near the intersection of Rupel Road and Weddington Drive. And I'll invite you all to come up here and take a look at this later, because it's kind of hard to see it, I'm sure, at this scale. But anyway, developing that area as sort of the core, the heart for the neighborhood. We developed a central green area that it could incorporate a farmer's market to the northwest of that intersection, a lot of mixed-use development, and smaller and what's called missing middle type housing types in this area to try and transition from a commercial area into the existing single-family residential areas. The next main principle was supporting active transportation options, so better routes for bicycles, better accessibility for people walking, particularly along Weddington Drive and across Weddington Drive. People felt like there was some restrictions in those areas. And then the final guiding principle was designating a north-south oriented greenway through the corridor. And so our vision for that essentially connects, this area is Bryce Davis Park, and we have a corridor that comes down and crosses Weddington Drive and ties all the way down past the Boys and Girls Club to an area near the Owl Creek School. And if you were to see a larger alternative transportation map, you would see how that would tie in with a larger ring of bicycle paths and trails that ties into the city's main trail network. A couple other key things we showed on the plan. We proposed replacing the 2 signals on the west side of Interstate 540 with a roundabout, which was a little bit of a far out there, kind of advanced proposal. We have shared that with the highway department, and I'll tell you in a minute how that's going. We added a bicycle and pedestrian combined shared path on the north side of the bridge over 540 to provide connectivity between the east and west sides of Interstate 540. We really heard from a lot of folks that they felt like the freeway was a big barrier. I know Rhonda's mentioned that it's difficult for her to get to the IHOP out there for breakfast. Hopefully that'll help her out a little bit. Yeah. So this is still in draft form. We're planning on taking this plan to the Planning Commission for final blessing from them on February 11th, and then on to City Council for you guys to bless it on March 5th. So after March 5th, we should have an adopted plan. Then we can move on to start working on our short-term implementation goals, which are, first one is a speed study for Weddington Drive, so working with the highway department to potentially adjust the speed limit along that street. A new interchange for Interstate 540. We really heard from a lot of folks that there's a lot of traffic congestion here at this interchange, and something needed to be done about that. The good news is the highway department already had plans for working on that interchange, so we've started a dialogue with them. Potential for incorporating this roundabout into their design. Some zoning changes to create this heart of the neighborhood. We felt like there's some necessary zoning changes that would need to happen to create a more mixed-use, walkable environment. Amending the city's alternative transportation plan to include that north-south corridor I mentioned. Prioritizing parkland dedication to get some of these green spaces dedicated. This park, we showed another park out here, and then finally creating a conservation subdivision ordinance, which is a type of development that allows a property owner to develop a piece of property at the same density that he might have been allowed, whatever his zoning density is, but he can cluster, and this is an example here where you can cluster all of the homes in a tighter area, thus reserving part of the property as green space or open space. So it really helps to achieve some of the city's green space designation goals, preservation goals, and then also achieving some semblance of density where you cluster those homes. So I mentioned our discussions with the highway department. We have visited with them twice so far on this interchange design. They've got that planned for starting construction in late 2014, which is pretty soon. That's just next year. And they have told us that they will model our roundabout, take a look at it in their model and see if it meets their traffic demand requirements. And if so, then they'll give it some further consideration as to whether or not it's a viable design alternative. They are having a public meeting I spoke with them today. They still haven't set the date for the public meeting on this bridge, but it'll be sometime in February or March. And the place to look for to find out when that meeting actually gets scheduled is on their webpage. You go to Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department. They have an upcoming events list right on their very front page, and that's where that date will be listed whenever it finally gets scheduled. So if you're curious to attend that public meeting and share your thoughts with the Highway and Transportation Department, then look for that event. And I imagine we can probably get that word out to folks once we find out when that date is. So I think that's all I've got to tell you about this. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those before I tell you about one other project we've got going on.
Point out Rupel again on that, please.
Rupel is right here,
Thank you.
right in the center, so that kind of made sense that it was the heart. And like I said, more than welcome to come up here and take a look at this.
Where exactly is the Boys and Girls Club building?
It is,
Right there.
it's right here, yeah.
Okay.
So is Rupel, again, going to be extended to Mount Comfort this year? Or when?
The plan for Rupel is a southern extension
okay.
first down to Highway 62. That is funded for design this year. The northern extension,
That's actually going to be discussed next week at the street committee.
Is it?
Because we've got some essentially extra money from being able to do some of the earlier bond projects. Some of those came in under projections. So the street committee is actually going to look at that, and I think that is one of them that's being talked about, is to get 2 lanes for now, with the other lanes coming when the bond issue comes in 14 and 15.
2 is better than.
But it'll get rid of that
Yeah.
funky intersection.
so it's on a list competing with other priorities,
Yeah,
throughout the city.
and they've got to prioritize that and look at it. There's not enough to do everything they listed, but they're going to put it in some type of order and they'll go as far as the money will go.
4-lane boulevard from south of Battle Creek to 6th Street, total project budget $8.15 million.
That one is
So
in the
that's-
bond, in the third phase of the bond issue,
Yeah.
which will be
That's
issued
that's
14, end of 14.
For construction in 2015,
Well,
possibly.
I'd say 14, 15,
Mount
15,
Comfort to
16 is.
Rupel is $10 million. Final cost $10,220,000. That was I-540 to Rupel. That was
But the remainder of that will be in the bond issue too.
It is.
I think so, yeah.
So we'll talk about that at street committee meeting on the 4th. Yeah, on the 4th. So this was really exciting, and many of you participated in this, I know, and the roundabout idea was, a lot of people talked about that and got excited about that, and I think we have a good friend in Dick Trammell who's on the board, one of our commissioners, and so I think more public input we can get there, and the more we can all let him know a little bit about how much we want him to speak up for us, is going to help.
Definitely. I'll say that, the highway department they're cautious. They're a conservative organization in the sense that they, change happens slowly, and roundabouts are, there's not a lot of them in Arkansas. We've got one example here in Fayetteville that I think is working pretty well so far. So they want to be darn sure that this is going to work before they're going to go out and spend millions of dollars constructing it. But if we think it's a really good option for this intersection, particularly because the way we've incorporated the pedestrian bicycle side track or side path, There's no, we're coming under the roundabout and through the middle of it, and so we're minimizing and limiting all the pedestrian vehicular conflicts. Adding this roundabout allows us to remove 2 signals at the intersection, and then in its place we proposed a signal for the intersection of Tahoe and Marvin where they hit Weddington Drive, which would allow that left turn access out of the Harps parking lot, which I know is very difficult whenever to make if there's any kind of traffic out there. Yeah.
Peter had one meeting here that was with businesses from Weddington. We're invited. We were up here one afternoon, and some of the conversation was the businesses north and south of Weddington, but to the west of the interstate, right? And the development there of one-way streets and how that affects and negatively can impact their businesses. And so not only did we meet together at the Boys and Girls Club as residents, but we also met with business owners and asked for their input on the plan as well. It's a good project you did. You had a question?
What about the 2 signals on the other side of that interchange?
So one of the signals remains, the other signal is going away, and that's achieved by, instead of, now if you're going east on Weddington and you wanted to go north onto 540, you got to stop at the signal, wait for the green arrow, and then make your left. Well, instead of that, you're now able to make a free right and do a complete circle and enter the freeway going north. So it gets rid of that need for that signal. The only signal that's left is for the off-ramp off of 540, which is being combined with Futrell Drive, so the two come together since Futrell is one way.
And actually even move further to the east, more like where that one street's put in through the Marinoni's property already. It will move that lane further to the east and then have that loop.
Yeah. And that was actually the highway department's idea to do that, so we incorporated that in our plan.
That'll be the result of the half-cent sales tax we voted on in November. That'll be part of that, so it's already moving forward.
One more?
One more.
The extension of Rupel from Mount Comfort to Weddington, or I guess replacement, whatever you call it. I assume that the Mount Comfort end will be where the signal is now.
Yes, if you'll notice there, they built kind of out, kind of looks like half a dam out across that field. That's where the road will come in.
And where does it tie into the existing street?
It's here now, it will move over and then go back to the existing street over there around that curve.
That's going to be expensive.
Yeah. So that's what she read off, $10 million from there on down. 2 of the lanes is mostly built, but the other 2 in that connection will have to be tied in.
All right, shifting gears. Sidewalks. So my group has been working with Terry on a Safe Routes to Schools grant application for 2 sections of sidewalk along Salem Drive. Thank you, Terry. And essentially, we've got, the reason this is applicable for Safe Routes to School, we've got 2 elementary schools. We've got Holcomb Elementary right here, and then we've got Holt Middle School right here. And we've got students, living in these 2 subdivisions, and they've got no way to walk to Holt Middle School because their sidewalk doesn't exist right here. There's a little bit of sidewalk in here, but there's no bridge across the creek at this location. Pardon me?
That's Holt Middle School, that's not Holcomb Elementary
It's the
School?
opposite. The one above the softball fields is Holcomb.
Yeah.
The other one's Holcomb.
Okay.
Holt's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Good catch.
I was just waiting to see if anybody noticed it.
I was confused.
Thank you. We'll be sure and correct that before we submit this to the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department. Anyway, the purpose of a Safe Routes to Schools grant is to enable and encourage children, including those with disabilities, to walk to school, make bicycling and walking to school safer and more appealing, and thereby encouraging healthy and active lifestyles from an early age, and then to facilitate the planning, development, and implementation of projects and activities that will improve safety and reduce traffic, fuel consumption, air pollution in the vicinity of schools. So all very worthwhile goals. The beauty of this particular project is that this section right here is proposed to be built as 12 feet wide so that it will eventually be part of a finished trail, Clabber Creek Trail. It's going to run essentially right through there. So this is a piece of the Clapper Creek Trail that's planned to start construction next year. So it'll get us a little ways down the road onto that project. Let's see what else I want to tell you about the project. Part of the proposal requirements to the Arkansas Highway Transportation Department are that we have a letter of support from surrounding neighbors and communities. So I'm going to pass out some information for you all. There's a map on the back and information about the grant and information at the bottom in case you're interested in writing us, giving us a letter of support. But I was hoping that as Ward 4, you all would be willing to give us a vote of support tonight, and then we can have your 2 Ward 4 representatives sign that letter of support for us. So turn the table over to Rhonda here to maybe lead us in exercise of voting for that support.
I don't know that we need a formal vote, but it would be nice to have a consensus that he could take back. Does anybody have anything but, yes?
I got here late, I'm sorry. Who, is this 100% funded by them?
It is. It's 100% funded by the...
So you don't have any skin in the game at all?
No.
That helps.
No skin in the game at all. It's going to be constructed by Terry's crews, and
Just allows me to move sidewalk money that I would spend there somewhere else.
yeah. Yeah, so it's essentially 777 feet of sidewalk and the bridge across the creek.
Along with that, is there any plans to put no parking signs on both sides of Salem Drive from the end of the park all the way up to Crystal? Because one of the things that I'm here for tonight, and I'm sure Hayes is here as well, is recently, especially in the afternoon when parents are coming to pick up their children from the school, while there's still plenty of parking spaces in the school lot and in the adjoining softball lot, parents are lining up and parking on both sides of the street, even getting out of their cars to go with their kids, creating a strong safety hazard.
And you're talking about in this area right here? Yes, sir?
Yeah, parking on both sides of the street from Crystal down to Bentgrass, and then from here, this is like, right, there's a little service entrance here to the back of the park. I mean, it lines up both sides. I've almost hit somebody, there's almost been head-on collisions because through traffic is trying to pass through the middle of cars parked on both sides of the street, especially in this area right here. No parking signs are needed.
So let me ask you this. How much would it solve the problem if there was no parking on the west side, but allow them to park? Because I'm going to get a lot of grief from the school.
There's plenty of parking for the parents to go to in the softball complex and in the school lot.
I understand that, but we will get, everybody wants convenience. So what I'm saying is, though, if I only had parking on the east side where the kids would not have to cross the street, would that allow enough room to do away with most of that traffic hazard? Is there some give and take here?
Yeah, it would help.
So I mean, could we try that to start with?
Yes.
Because I think that's something I can sell to the school. If I go tell them no parking on both sides, it's just going to cause an uproar with 500 parents.
I got you.
So I want something I can win at.
It's a start, and I think it would be a great start. My concern is the kids.
Yeah. Well, that way I like that because it doesn't have them crossing the street.
Well, there are children that cross because they live in that neighborhood across.
Yeah, but
it'd be a start, and it would at least, cause some of the problem to go away, and would clear up some of the mess, and there'd be less of this. Because I just sat there one day, and somebody was just talking. I couldn't get through.
Well, I can sell that to a principal going, the driver or the passenger side is towards your school. They do not have to get around into the street. It's a safety concern for them, and not just say, everybody doesn't have a kid here is fed up with it. So I mean, that's the plus on that is it looks like a compromise for both sides.
Now I know Hayes sent a request into the city, and I believe at that request, a couple of days last week there was a Fayetteville police car sitting down toward the end of the ballpark, observing, and I'm sure that's what he was there for because that's how we got the no parking signs along.
I'm the one in charge of parking signs,
Okay.
so I'll just contact the principal and we'll talk directly on issues with the surrounding area. And we've talked to them and we feel like this is a just compromise that won't totally interfere with the ability of your parents to pick them up. It may force some of them to get in the parking lot, which is fine.
Yeah.
They just don't
Yes.
want to get in there because it's hard to get out.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's cars parked on both sides. So hence my problem with
Sounds
trying
like
to
a good
sell
compromise.
this.
If you have mailboxes on one side of the road, that's a good excuse if you leave that. They did that in our neighborhood. The side that had the mailboxes, they put no parking.
Well,
The
they're-
other side, yeah.
The only mailbox that could possibly be on that part on the
But-
east
but
side
it
would be
wouldn't-
the
that wouldn't be an
school.
excuse.
Would be
Okay,
the
okay.
school
Not many
because the
mailboxes
softball
on
field's
there.
there.
Sure. Postman takes the mail directly in there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
I'll,
worries there. That would be great, thanks, sir.
I'll talk to them.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm almost out of time on my piece of the agenda, but I was hoping,
How big a grant are we talking about here? You
We
mentioned
don't-
dollar figure.
yeah, we don't have the dollar figure nailed down completely yet, but our estimate, or my estimate right now is somewhere between $40,000 and $55,000 to $60,000, somewhere in that range. We're still working with, Terry's guys are still working on the
We're gonna actually meet about that tomorrow.
yeah, on how much.
But they're not required to match or anything, it's
Zero
straight up.
match. Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's for 100. Is that state dollars? Is it federal?
It's federal money that the state hands out.
Anything the
Because-
federal hands out always goes through the highway fund.
Yeah.
As the administrator.
So if we don't take it, could that go back to help balance the federal budget?
$50,000 or $60,000.
Mary's
Pretty quick, I imagine.
Just get us on 2 seconds.
Yeah. I'd like to think it would, Archie, but
It's more likely if we don't take it, somebody else will.
yeah.
I mean, one of the things to consider is that this part of Ward 4 has so many roofs. And we are, as we think about businesses, then sidewalks can go in as part of development, but we've got a lot of roofs out there and a lot of kids. And
Yeah.
this is gonna be, I think we'll be in good position to, Alan and I both have seen the letter and the information and appreciate you sharing it. Does anyone else have any question about it, about the grant specifically? Would you?
Do you want us to, just sort of have a show of hands of who supports it? Let's do that
We
then.
do.
Write the letter.
All in
Right.
favor? Is it unanimous? Anyone opposed? Okay, Ward
All
4
right.
unanimous.
That's what we like to hear.
Thank
I have
you.
one question.
Okay.
Between the two red marks,
Mm-hmm.
what gets done in that area?
There's already
It's already
sidewalk
there.
There is.
in there, yeah.
There
Yeah,
is.
Yes.
Salem Village built that
Mhm.
many years ago, before the softball complex even.
But there's no.
Yeah, I walk my dogs up and down.
Okay,
that street,
thank
so
you.
I know.
Yeah, that's a good question, but that's the reason it's a
And
disjointed.
the only other
work.
comment to this is, even if we don't get the grant, we're building that piece this year. It's just, if we
It's on
get
the
it,
list.
it will just allow me to
Do
put
something.
$50,000 or $60,000 back in to be used on some other section of sidewalk somewhere around town.
So that's a good segue into Terry Gully. I was really excited at our 12/11 meeting of the street committee, December the 11th, where we got a little proposed plan from Terry that we would have 81,000 feet of sidewalk.
That's the entire city.
Well, that's the entire city. Ours is 19,000, we've got 20 of the 80. So we're excited about that, and Terry's gonna talk about that a little bit now.
I
Thank
got
you.
a few of these with pictures. So maybe it's got those already. The street list is the same. So we kind of pass those around and look at it.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, And those first few pictures, that's just kind of some of the stuff that we did in 2012. Like that first one there is showing, and I'll hold it up for other people to see. This is, we were taking out some of the brick on Dixon Street. This is right there by Cadova and George's. And we replaced it with a base underneath it, because underneath it, it shifted so much. You know how undulated that sidewalk was. We put mortar underneath it and then reset the brick in there. The second picture shows a section of East Street right in front of what used to be the Cosmopolitan, now the Chancellor. We did a cost share there where they actually kicked in $20,000 towards the construction materials. So we essentially essentially got our construction materials for free. The next picture's the same thing. This kind of shows you how we pour the curb and the brick pocket for this. There's another one here that gets really, shows you the complication behind it. This is a section along where the mountain inn was. We completed this one section of college that was missing, that we didn't do when we did college a couple of years ago. The next one shows Center Street after we did it. If you remember this side, kind of in front of Taste of Pie and all, it was just really broken up. There's a great picture from somewhere in the 1800s of a dirt street that kind of shows the same thing, showing what the street looked like back then. This is looking from college back up on the north side. You can see the detail my guys have to go into to put this together to get the curves and the brick pocket. It's all got to be done by hand. This picture here is Lawson, just east of Porter. It was a section that had no curb and gutter. It was poor condition, and it's essentially brand new now with the sidewalk. We'd done the earlier part earlier. This one is out on Mission. This section up partway up the hill here, kind of where the clearing is city-owned land. And then above that was Dr. Garner's property. He donated us 3 acres free of charge to continue all the way up to Vandergrift, all along the front of his property. So we've got a continuous sidewalk all the way down to the 45 entrance into Covington, essentially to the city limits. And we got it, and by him donating that, we got it set back far enough whenever they widen that road in the future, it should not have to be removed. This one here is Oakland. We did a complete rebuild here, did a bunch of drainage work because we flooded a lot of property on the east side of that. We fixed the drainage as well as put in about 2,000 foot of brand new sidewalk, and then the street's been repaved since then. This is Razorback going up the hill from Maple. Total transformation there. And then the last picture shows it up in the front of the new nursing school. And this was also a cost share with the university. They paid the entire cost of the materials, which was $57,000, and we built it with our time. So anyway, going into the next sheet showing proposed 2013-14. This is actually the 2013 part. You want to just talk Ward 4?
Yeah.
Streets. So I'm going to kind of skip over the first pages 1, 2, and 3. You can see it's about 7,000, 6,000, 4,000 in those wards. The second page shows 5,500 feet. The first 2 sections of Salem listed there are those 2 pieces that Peter showed you. We already have them on our list, but we're just trying to further our money by getting this grant. The section there on Cleveland is just a replacement of some bad concrete and to improve that. Potts is from Palmer to Razorback on the north side. That's new sidewalk. We always put in here, usually in each ward, some various replacements. That's just when we get call-in citizen requests for, I've got a 100-foot section that's crumbled, can you fix it, type of thing. So we put a little bit in there for that. There's the 2 Salem pieces. Cross Avenue is between Halsell and Markham. We're trying to make a connection from Sang around and come out over by the football stadium. This is new. Halsell Road, do the section from Cross back down to the corner to the west. And then Sang, we'll finish that up to where we have sidewalk down by Lawrence Circle. And then there's another section of Salem there, which will connect on down to Mount Comfort, the last section down there did not have it. That will give us a continuous sidewalk all the way from Mount Comfort all the way to the school. So that's what we're shooting for in 2013. Then if you go to the next page, it kind of shows, and we've got some in here showing bond. And these are the various, like the first one in Ward 1 there, Cato Springs is under construction now. These are ones that will be finished. Highway 16 is being started out by our office where recycling drop-off is going eastbound. So we had so much of that going on. If you look down in Ward 3, we've got 1 road listed, Crossover Road, because that's generating 24,000 feet of sidewalk in that 1 ward. That's why they're so light in the plan, because what we did was take what we were doing plus all the bond projects coming in the next 2 years and try and add up what's the average amount in each ward. And so we tried to balance that out with, like you can see, Ward 2 doesn't have any bond issues, so they're getting more sidewalk on individual streets. And then, you know, when we get past 2014, then we'll go out to more leveling this out. But, and then the last page there is Ward 4. You don't have any bond projects that year either, so there's a lot of sidewalks listed, and they're all new, no replacement. Now, one thing I want to say about Ward 4 is everything north of Weddington out there, and a lot of it south, outside the loop, 540, is mostly new. There's a high percentage of sidewalk in that area. We did a map, I should have brought that map, I didn't think about it, but it showed by ward the percentages of sidewalk. Ward 4 has, if you take the length of the street and multiply it by 2, there's about 230 miles or something like that of street, or in potential sidewalk on both sides of the street in that ward. This ward has just under 50% of the streets have sidewalk. The majority of them have it on both sides because it's new and was required since the requirements went into effect. You take an example of the least is Ward 1. They're at 30% of that same mileage. So it's older, it was before the sidewalk requirements were in through planning and all. So they have a lot less sidewalk than you have in Ward 4. Ward 4 is the highest, Ward 3 is the next highest, Ward 2 follows that, and then Ward 1 drags up the rear. Ward 4 is 46, I think Ward 3 is 43, and the others are more like 40 and then 30. So we talked to the council a lot about, we try and divide things up equally amongst wards, but all wards aren't created equally when it comes to infrastructure improvements, because older areas don't tend to have sidewalk. They have a lot of open ditches, and if you get in the south and really look at it, even along Huntsville is that way. And that's been a street that used to be 16 and was one of the major routes into town from the southeast. So anyway, but you can see these here, and the other thing due to what I was getting at is outside the loop has a lot of sidewalk. So a lot of these streets that don't have any sidewalk, and we look at it trying to get, I would love to get sidewalk on one side of every street before I worry about going back and getting sidewalk, a street that has sidewalk on one side already. We're gonna try and get those, and then we can go back and fill in the other sides in the future. But that would at least give, most residential streets, you can cross the street and it not be an issue, and your children are safe doing it. So anyway, a lot of these are like in the Berry Street area, some more in Halsell Center, section off Double Springs where there's a gap. And the things we really look at is sidewalk around schools and sidewalk that, where can we put 800 feet in? Well, a good example of this was on North Gregg Street, north of North Street a few years ago. It is like 7,000 feet of sidewalk between there and Township. We put in 1,400 feet of sidewalk and connected the entire 7,000 feet. So by spending the money on 1,400 feet, we essentially connected a 7,000 stretch. And there's continuous sidewalk along that whole way now. So we try and look at doing that. That's an example with Salem, doing the same thing. We're putting in 1,800 feet and we're going to connect where we, all the way to north end of Crystal Springs, all the way down will be a sidewalk at least on one side. So anyway, that's why a lot of these are in the Markham, the Oliver, Ora, Palmer, connecting a piece on the north end of Sunset that doesn't go all the way down to Wedding. So anyway, that's what it shows 19,000 feet going in that year. And none of that is bond, so it's all neighborhood type streets. But that's kind of an overview of what we got planned. And we started looking over 2 years, always done this over 1 in the past, but we felt like with all the bond projects, we need to kind of throw it in, and it's close to, it's 81,000 in 14, and then 23 more in 13. So all total, this is $100,000. Now the only other thing related to sidewalks, the mayor's made a commitment that we get money out of the half-cent sales tax from the highway department, we also get additional state turnback money that, and that's how the entire transportation division is funded, is about $4.5 million a year is gasoline turnback. So this is gonna be sales tax turnback, and it can be used for transportation improvements. So he has made the commitment to the council that he plans on upping the sidewalk production to the same level funding-wise as the trails, which is in the neighborhood of 1.3 to 1.5 million. The current sidewalk is about 500,000 to 600,000 a year, so it's going to be almost tripling the money. But I caution him, and I'll caution you, is tripling the money with not giving me additional people does not triple production, because we will, but it ought to double production, because we'll have to supplement that with some additional temporary help, and then also using contractors, where we'll do all the prep and they may do the final pour. So we're looking as how that will best work to get the best bang for our buck, but we should see a ramp up even more so in the future. And he's told me he intends to do that. That tax lasts 10 years, and he's planning on putting this into infrastructure for the next 10 years. So.
Busy life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Comments or questions?
I'm particularly happy about the hostel saying that that's such a dangerous whole stretch to walk and go around that corner, as you know. I know you've been wanting to put one there a long time, and I'm really glad to see that happening. And I know getting the right of ways is not easy to do all
Well,
that.
that was an issue there, and you know, just like had that one development that was trying to go in over there.
Right.
Went in, they would have paid for that.
I know.
For us for free. So anytime we've got a chance, we think we might get it for free through development, we will let that slide a while to see if that works. Because if we get it for free, then I can use that money to build some sidewalk somewhere else.
Philip?
One additional thought is adding a section of sidewalk from on Porter Road there at that church dwelling place out to where the new trail comes in, out through the university. That's, I walked that quite a bit, and you're in the ditch on one side, or in the trees and brush on the other side. It's, I don't know what it would take, but just add that to the thought process. Because I think they're planning on taking the trail out underneath the interstate and go out that way.
Yeah, we're this close, and we have had submitted with the highway department. I think they're on the 7th submittal to try and get that from where we ended the trail
Back
on the
towards
south side across to Mount Comfort on the north side.
Right.
And we will go on the west side underneath. We'll actually cut back that concrete slope.
Right.
And build a trail underneath that west side. And part of the holdup too is they were waiting to see if this half-cent sales tax passed.
Right.
Because they'll be widening that to 6 lanes, so that's going to mean additional bridge work there. So we don't want to build they don't want us building something there that'll be in their way, and we don't want to build it and be in theirs also. Because I don't want them ripping it out after we put it in. But we think we're hopefully within a few weeks of getting that approved, and once we do that, we're about to finish the trail out around Lake Fayetteville, and that will be one of the next places we go to make that connection. And then we'll put in crosswalks there and get on the west side and go across. And we've got traffic lights to at least stop the track there, and we can look at that section. I think once we get that, then that section becomes more important. Because we're also looking at trying to get sidewalk down Dean Street back to Garland at some point also.
Yes.
Hi, I actually had a question about one of the streets.
Okay.
And it's Foster Lane. First, I want to thank you. We're very appreciative that you put some asphalt on it for us. Very, very appreciative.
Good. Glad to finally get that done.
Yeah, it's been a while. I noticed on the plan it says Foster Lane to dead end, and then there's actually 2 dead ends on that. There's a
We were planning on going down, making the curve and going south, not going further east.
Because that's part of Foster Lane also. That's the part we were trying to address actually with that.
Well, that's the part we were looking at, because how many houses are on that stretch? 2?
2.
And that was part of
One
why.
of mine.
Well, that was the reason
Oh, man.
we're not going that way, is because it was more like a driveway and it serviced 2 homes.
Well, actually, it services 3 homes, or a garage, and then 2 homes.
We can relook at that.
Would you please, I'd appreciate it.
And we're going to pave that, we're not planning on widening.
I understand that.
It'll be still pretty much a 1 lane.
I understand that.
Probably 12 to 13
Yeah.
feet, because that's about all
Yeah.
we've got there without.
But if you, my neighbor actually put the pavement, did you notice there's some pavement out there that we actually put?
Yeah.
If you could at least come up and meet that pavement, I think you're only talking probably 200 feet.
I'll see if I can accidentally order a little extra
Oh.
and have to get rid of it.
Thank you, Terry.
Appreciate it.
He's heard my emails about that street, right?
No, I mean, we put it on there because of that.
You've
I
been
mean,
great.
You had brought it up and we looked at it and just.
And I'm sorry,
it
I
takes
didn't
us a while
realize
to-
that,
I-
yeah.
Well, we looked at it when my paving guy and I, we personally went and looked at it, and what we were seeing was trying to get where we thought more houses, rather than, we saw that as only 2.
Yeah.
So that's why we did not,
Okay.
and our plan put it that way. It doesn't mean it can't.
But it actually does serve 3 driveways though, so,
Okay, I'll see if I can't make that happen.
thank you.
And I'll send you an email and remind you, okay?
Just, you just cover my rear at the street.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
No, I gotta say, and I'm just to speak to that, it takes a lot longer sometimes to get things done than I thought when I ran for this position. I thought we would just say, here's what we need, but goodness, this staff of the city has been so responsive to try to get things done as fast as possible. Appreciate you, Terry. I'm teasing about it a little bit, but thank you.
Well, and what we do out there in
Tried.
Ward 4, as we annexed all that a few years
Yes.
ago, is we've been trying to pave some of the gravel roads every year. We've done at least 2, I think, since we annexed it. We started with the ones that were the more major, the longer ones, Blue Jay and some of those. We've got on the plan, I know, to do that one, and I think we have at least 1 more out there this year also. So we're doing a couple of those a year eventually. The problem with some of that is, some of those are private streets. And if they're a private street that serves 1 or 2 houses, the way we got them, the county had levels of service. They had just what was a county road. I think we've paved all those already. We had some that were private streets. I forget the third, if it was a residential or private. They had 3 classifications. And one of them, they would dump some gravel on it and grade once a year. And then they had others that they would either grade it or give you so many loads of gravel and not grade it. It was the lowest level. So, and we've got the issue with a couple of the roads out there that actually have 3 or 4 or 5 homes on them. Some of them are so restricted by right of way. We've got some that I don't even think I could fit my paver between the tree and the back of the garage on the other side of the street. So we functionally have no way to grade, pave, or do anything, and I don't think, those were ones they did nothing to. But we've tried to take the ones where we've got room to operate and get them to pave, because it's much less trouble for us to have them paved than it is to have to grade them 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So, but if you're on that gravel road and it needs grade, call us and we'll try and work it in.
Well, there's been nothing there the 3 years we've been there, so.
And I think technically I think that was a private lane.
It may have been.
I think it is a private one. So it's one that they were doing essentially next to
Well, I look forward to seeing you out there, Mr.
But
Bill.
we're planning on doing it regardless, because at least that one has several houses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad y'all were here tonight to help clarify the.
When they said Foster Lane,
I saw you just
Yeah.
sing.
I did. No, I wasn't thinking. I go, I got that answer.
Oh, well, we just need more Foster Lane.
Yeah,
Okay,
unfortunately, the
good.
person who spearheaded that project lives on that part of Foster Lane that
Oh.
they weren't gonna pave.
That's us.
Yes.
Yeah, we've emailed a lot too, haven't we? Okay. Any more questions to Terry? Adam?
Just one. This is my first meeting, and I thought I maybe should have looked online. Is there a similar street plan to something like the sidewalk plan?
The overlay plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Is
I
that-
didn't bring it with me. But yeah.
Are you talking about all the ones you're gonna overlay with the new?
There's a copy laying right up here at the front. I printed off some sidewalks and the streets.
Terry, would you talk briefly, I know this is not exactly what you're doing, but would you talk a little bit about the overlay? We've got miles and miles of streets that are gonna get new tops with the new equipment that the council bought, that you bought last year and we approved, right? Miles and miles of new pavement in Ward 4, particularly out around the dog park area on those houses that are, what, about 20 years old in the streets?
I'm sorry.
You wanna talk about that?
Tell me again.
So out there around the Bryce Davis Park, there are a bunch of streets out there that you're gonna go in with the new equipment. Could you talk about that? Because I think that's gonna be huge.
One of the things we're looking at, and in fact, I was just at a meeting last week about it, is we've got about $1.8 million for overlay in the entire city. And just a little background on what we do is, if you look at most historically how long a paved street will last, it's somewhere, they will go on a degradation curve that goes 15 years. At 15 years, usually your asphalt is deteriorated around 50%. That's a critical stage of any more than that, and it's usually when it gets to looking alligator. Well, that's past the point of doing a minor overlay or a minor repair. It's usually because it's letting water through, and if it gets wet underneath, that's when we start getting potholes. It's also when, bigger sinkholes, things like that. It's because the base below it cannot support the asphalt above it. So just due to budget over the last few years, we were up to a little over $2 million on our asphalt plan, but to make the CIP program balance, with the sales tax down the last couple, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, I get like almost $5 million of the 6.6 in the CIP program goes into my division for sidewalks, trails, and overlay. So those are where the big chunk of the money that goes into the CIP program. So it only leaves a couple $1 million for IT development, fire trucks, and other things. So looking at that 15-year cycle, so what they've come about doing around the country is the old method was slurry seal. The new method is microsurfacing, which essentially it's about a 3/8 inch asphalt compound, but it's put down almost in a slurry. And then it's got a chemical reaction that will harden it. And so what we do is, normally in our overlay program, we're milling 2 inches of asphalt and putting 2 inches back. If it gets too degraded, we've got to dig out the bad spots, repair those, and then we do that, and hope we have enough good spots left to support that 2 inches. That's costly. It eats up my money a lot faster. So we've been looking for other ways to make the bucks go a little bit further. And one is we can save about 40% on the mill and overlay by doing this micro sealing. We've got one contract out now where we're going to be doing Summerhill. It was actually on the 12th budget, but due to weather, we could not get it done in time. So we're going to be doing that kind of around April 1st, and a section of Old Missouri from Joyce Design. But in the this year's project list, it's all in Ward 4, and we've got a list of
20,868 feet.
Yeah. So
4 miles.
yeah, and it's for several of it. It's all the mica, granite, all those streets out there in Crystal Springs. And where we are looking for there is streets, and a lot of the streets in that area, and why we're going to concentrate out there. One, it keeps our costs lower by keeping the contractor in a centralized location, so he will give us a better bid. 2, we're looking for streets that are 10 to 15 years old. If they're side streets like that, we can stretch that 15-year degradation out. If it's Salem Road, we're not going to get over 15 years probably between pavings there. And on a major road like that, we're probably going to do less of the slurry than we would the mill and overlay. But as these streets get 10, 12 years old, you'll notice how they start turning gray, or they oxidize. So they start losing that oil, and then the rock in there starts coming loose. So it'll start, it's called raveling. What we want to do is before we get to that point, we can put this sealant on it. We actually went up to Springfield, we've gone to Tulsa and looked at 9-year-old streets there and watched them doing it in Tulsa in a $500,000 neighborhood. They're good at it, we're gonna hire it done, put this seal on, and what we hope to do is, we've got a street that gets 10 years old, we put this on it. We get 8 or 9 more years out of it. If we still got a good seal, we can do it again and get another 8 or 9 years. So we're trying to stretch out where maybe we're milling and overlaying over 30 years instead of over 15. And by doing that, we're saving 40% or more each time we can do that. If we'd had to mill and overlay it, it would be quite a bit more expensive. So it's a process we're going to try. It only raises the surface 3/8 of an inch, so it doesn't require us. It'll lay to the gutter. There'll be 3/8 inch higher on it, but if you'll see a lot of the older streets, the way the street department used to do it, they laid in the gutter, and the gutter got shorter. Well, that drove me crazy because we lose drainage capacity. So we have been milling all that out and laying back to the original gutter height. So we have a 6-inch gutter. A 6-inch gutter on a street wide, like in Rolling Hills, will carry thousands more gallons a minute down that street before it jumps over and runs into the yard. So we're reclaiming that. This won't raise it too much. We think we could, do it twice and still only be up a little over a 1/2 inch. And at some point we will have to mill and overlay, but if we can stretch that out to 30 years, then that's what we're going for. And instead of, if we were milling and overlaying this, we'd maybe do half these streets. So we're gonna maybe go from what would have been 9 to 10 miles with the money we have, to this will get us to 12 to 13 miles. So we get an extra 2 to 3 miles out of this for the same cost, or the same amount of money that we have applied. So you're gonna see a lot of that out on the west side of town, because it just happens to be the right age. It's not degraded to the point we can't do this.
And I wasn't as interested in all of the chemicals and all that went into the process as I was into how much will you all be disrupted when they're sitting on your street and you have to go around, so I was all about that.
Well, I'll talk about that.
This is so minimal. It's great.
We actually watched them do a street in Tulsa. It was one block. They pulled one half the street. They go around, put out notifications the day before. They'll re-knock on doors the day of. You can drive on it right after we put it down because it's wet. It'll peel up. But they pulled one side of that street in about 12 minutes, a block, 500 feet. And then as quick as they backed up and pulled the other side of the street. And then essentially to straight line traffic, you can drive on it in an hour. Preferably, they would like no traffic on it for 4 hours. We're gonna ask you to stay off of it for 4 hours, but you're gonna get notified the day before and the morning, get knocked on. Hey, we need to get your car out if you want it out, or otherwise can you stay there for 4 hours? Because turning into the driveways will disrupt it, because even on asphalt, even after it's rolled, till it hardens, you turn your tires without moving. That's the worst thing for it. So, but it's pretty quick. 4 hours, you'll be back in the neighborhood. Essentially what we try and do is let everybody get out, and then at 8:20 you start putting this down, and by 2 o'clock, well, we're gonna shoot for letting people get to work. We want you out of there if you need to get out of there, and then just go shopping, take the kids to school, go get a cup of coffee, just give us some time, and then I think it'll work really good. The product looks really strong, and if it works, it has the ability to extend our money.
Well, I thought of you, Adam. I know you're concerned about potholes, so got an email from you about that. But yeah, it's very exciting. We saw the video of this, city council did, and voted on it, and yeah, it's gonna be looks like a good way to do
this
things.
was the micro-skill list, and then there's also like Edmore, Foster Lane, Lancelot, Sang, Nicole, Reed, Venus, and Wilmot will just be overlaid or milled and overlaid. If some of them don't have asphalt, we'll just get it, the others more than likely be milled and overlaid. And this, we only did for 1 year. We'll do this list every year. And what we do is go out every year and look at, we evaluate the streets and come up with a combination of some that are just past that we take and have to rebuild a couple, 3 a year. Like Sycamore is one going on right now that we're doing. All right, I'm in way over.
Thank you. Let's do some neighborhood topics. Alan, did you want to talk about, you brought something from Town and Gown today?
I did. The Town and Gown Advisory Board met today. Their next meeting, if anybody's interested, is going to be March 25th. But today what they were able to do is, and then I put a sheet, I only made 12 copies because I didn't know how many people were going to be coming, but I can give someone mine too when I leave. They broke out their committee of 18 into subgroups, A, B, and C. So there'll be 6 members in each group, and on this sheet it has A, B, or C written on topics 1 through 10. And so you can tell which groups will be working on what projects, and some of them correlate, safety, neighborhood issues, things like that. And so if you have a specific concern about one of those issues that you find on this list, you can contact one of the people in that group, or you can call your Ward 4 resident, Ryan Miller, who is our representative to the Town and Gown Advisory Board. And on each one of those subgroups they broke into, they put a member from the city, a member from the university, and a member from the public. And they're hoping that by doing that they can actually get a little more accomplished, because it is such a large committee. And that just happened today, and that's why this doesn't look very put together, because I got it right before the meeting.
4:30, I'm on that also.
Oh, you are? Okay.
And yeah, kind of what we're going to do is not meet for 2 months and then bring those committees back and bring back the top item of each of those categories, and we tried to break it down into 3 because we felt like that committee could come back then and educate the entire group as a whole, and then we'll look at that. So.
Thank you. Good.
That's all I have.
Does anybody have any neighborhood topics they want to bring up in the last few minutes that we have here together? Yes.
Double springs between Weddington and the end of Farmington, 6th Street. The double yellow lines are gone, and there's an issue of people coming over those lines because they don't see them, especially at night when you come around like Goose Creek. And I was wondering who's responsible for...
Me.
Oh.
Am I going to be here every Wednesday?
Yeah. You're on.
Well, what we do, we paint those once a year, because that's it. And to paint the lines throughout the city is around $60,000 a year. And that's our budget for that. We repaint them usually beginning in May or something like that. And we repaint them every year. What I can do is look at that. I'll go out there and look at it, and if it's really wearing off, maybe I can come up with
It's pretty gone.
the ability.
At that turn at Goose Creek, it's gone.
Okay, well maybe I can, we can thermo that instead, which is thermoplastic, which is what you'll see on the interstates. It's
So it
a
has
life of that,
reflective?
well, it's same reflectivity.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it's a heat applied, kind of just like the crosswalk material to a degree, only it is spray on. It tends to last 8 to 10 years.
Okay, that would be nice.
So I can look at, since that's a high wear area, we can look at maybe doing a section of that, especially where the turns are, in that curve section.
Yeah.
And I'll just look at trying to thermal that little section so it'll last longer. Because anywhere the tires are not rolling straight, it wears off much faster.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Anybody else have something they want to bring up? Well, I'll bring up one more thing. The guy that I walk with regularly around Ward 4 and I pick up trash sometimes when we're walking, and we have this idea that we're going to organize some afternoon walks on Saturdays. I've got some vests ordered. We're going to just, people who just like to walk with us, we're going to have trash bags and gloves, and I'm going to email out to the Ward 4 list. I haven't had a chance to chat with you about this because I'm just now working on it. But so we're going to just do a few walk-arounds in the neighborhoods and on Weddington and some areas where we think we can help keep Fayetteville beautiful. We're gonna try to hook in with the new logo that the city is releasing and get some work done there. So be looking forward to hearing some things about just walking and picking up. We haven't thought of any clever, we can talk about some clever names, but that's coming up, some good get-togethers, times to visit together and talk, and also walk and help clean up our ward a little bit. So don't forget about the sidewalks to safe routes to schools grant project. If you have any questions, Pete, you can email Alan or me. We can get you to Peter with questions or comments if you want to write a letter of support.
I put Leif Olson's contact information. Leif works for me in the city, and he's the one working on the actual grant application. So if you do want to get a letter of support for the project, we'd love to have that. We'll include with our application to the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department, and just go ahead and write that up and send it to Leif.
Be a real win for Ward 4, I think. And Alan and I have talked a little bit about the next couple of meetings. You were interested in having Yolanda come, and so in February, Yolanda May. We also have Connie Edmonston ready to come talk to us a little more about some park issues. Red Oak Park, as you all know, many of you know, was vandalized and burned a while back, a couple of years ago, I think. And now the playground equipment is ordered and getting ready to be installed. We think it'll be installed this spring sometime. So that park's going to get back up and in working order. We've been working on that. Connie's trying to get that taken care of. So there have been some Ward 4 residents contacting me about that.
The only one other thing I'm working on is I'm trying to put together a real comprehensive database of email lists for people in Ward 4. And so if you have your neighbors and you talk to them, run into them, and you get their email address and want to shoot it to me, I'm putting together an Excel sheet that Rhonda and I can use, and that way if there's stuff we need to get out quickly to people, we can contact more people. Because word spreads a lot faster.
Did most of you get the email I sent out that had I added a few of you on that I knew had emailed me. We don't typically send it to entire neighborhood listservs, but maybe to the heads of the, did y'all get that one? Good. So if you know people who want to be added to it, we try to be considerate of your email, but we want to get it out to everybody who wants it. So Alan, you put some paper at the front of the sign up there, or email Alan or me, and we'll add you to that. We try to send it, Sarah was trying to send it out on Thursday or Friday before the council meeting the agenda meeting on Tuesday, and then also the week before the Ward 4 meeting. But just put it on your calendars. We meet Ward 4, 6 p.m. last Monday of every month, except December. Okay?
And you'll probably start hearing on NPR. They're going to start doing a PSA for us.
Good.
So
awesome.
More people hopefully will get the message too.
Good deal. All right. Thank you all for being here. Enjoyed it.